I'm your host, Ariel Willow. Welcome to Ghost Tea Podcast, a podcast for those who seek magic. Listener discretion is advised. None of the advice in this episode is to be used as replacement for help, guidance, or medication provided by licensed medical or mental health professionals. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of harming yourself or others, voices that are encouraging detrimental behavior, or beliefs of being attacked that is causing distress, please call your local emergency number or go to the nearest emergency care center. I encourage you to listen to episode 38 of Ghost Tea Podcast to better understand psychosis and or how to help those who may be experiencing psychosis. Hello, ghosties. Welcome back to Ghost Tea Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a requested topic that someone actually asked me to do in one of my recent live streams, and that was how to remove energies or entities that scare you. As always, people are going to have different views on things, and that is completely okay. I just want to share what I have found personally helpful for me in my practice with you. First of all, I feel like we have to get started with what is banishing? What does it mean to banish something? So banish, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is to send someone away from a country or a place as an official punishment, or to forbid, abolish, or get rid of something unwanted. I do want to talk about the difference between protection and banishing, because I do feel like in a lot of conversations, people confuse the two when they're trying to give advice to someone who's dealing with something that scares them. I think oftentimes we immediately go to, oh, I should protect myself, which protection is always good, and I think it's helpful, but you want to clean the surface or banish what is already there that is causing the distress before you set up protection. So if we're going to go through a metaphor that would explain this, I want you to imagine banishing as cleaning and protection as sealing. So if we're going to paint a wall and that wall has a bunch of dead bugs on it and dust and things like that, if you just paint over the wall without actually wiping it down first, you're just going to trap that dust and dirt and dead bugs onto that wall. Whereas if you banish before setting up protection, you're going to be cleansing or cleaning that wall before you put a new coat of paint on it. So it's sealing in that clean slate, if you will. But I also want to talk about the fact that a lot of people want to protect themselves so heavily that it's actually detrimental to them. This is something that was talked about in the cleansing, banishing, and protection episode of Ghost Tea Podcast as well, I believe. But I feel like it's worth mentioning again here because it is relevant to the topic. In a lot of ways, you have to be open to experiencing things that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar or even perceived as scary in order to have experiences and grow within your spiritual practice. I recently listened to the audiobook version of this book, which is Consorting with Spirits by Jason Miller. This is a pretty good book. I would recommend you add it to your to be read list. But I do want to mention there are things in here that I would advise against. He has a lot of really helpful information, but there are some rituals and conjuring things in here that I feel are more so appropriative of other cultures and beliefs and things like that. But he does have some alternatives that are ones that aren't appropriative. So I do think that it covers a lot of bases, but just go in with awareness and discernment when you're reading this book. However, he has a section on protection in chapter 6 of this book. And basically what he's talking about is how a lot of his students and people who come to him with issues around experiences that they're having or wanting to connect to spirit and things like that are having issues reaching spirit because they're setting up such heavy protection that nothing can get through. I want to read a little section from this book to kind of give you an idea of how he approaches it. Quote, "There are people who think that they should banish all spirits and unseen forces away from them on a daily basis, so that they essentially live in a bubble, allowing contact only with those spirits who they invite deliberately. I tried this approach. Ultimately, it's like wearing the armor in Excalibur all the time. It cuts you off from the spirits you would be better off meeting and forging relationships with. The same students that come to me hoping to have a vision of a god or a goddess, or to hear a spirit give them instructions for a spell, are the very same people who banish the heck out of their world every day, which essentially blocks them from the very experience they hope to have. When someone is experiencing an active psychic or magical attack, I, of course, have them banish every day. I have them shield and wear amulets. I have them disengage from most magical practices, even meditation, so that they can protect, heal, and fight back if necessary. You do not want to live your whole life like this." End quote. Obviously, he goes more into depth about it and why he feels that way, but I really solidly agree with what he says in that book in regards to protection. Something that I commonly talk to people about on live streams and things like that is how we are so scared of having experiences that we don't understand and having interactions with things that are unknown to us that we just close ourselves off completely to experiencing anything at all. One of the best things that you can do in order to open up your abilities, open up yourself to have spiritual experiences, etc., is actually working with your fear and understanding where it's coming from, why you have it, and how to identify when you are truly scared and feeling a sense of danger, or when you are projecting danger onto something that you simply don't understand. And this gets me into my second point in this episode. Is it scary and or dangerous, or just unfamiliar? This is why it is so important for you to be able to understand how your body is responding to danger signals. If you've come from a religious background, which I know that a lot of my followers and clients have, then you are likely to still have some of that lingering belief system within the way that your nervous system reacts to situations. If you've been trained from a young age to see anything that is unfamiliar to you, then that's something that I really encourage you to actively be trying to become more familiar with in your practice, because that is going to be something that, and I don't like to use the word block, but I do feel like it applies here, essentially blocks you from having the experiences with spirit, with deities, etc., that you're wanting to have. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I really do feel that fear is one of the biggest obstacles that keeps us from experiencing spirit, connecting with spirit, and opening ourselves up to experiences that we really truly want to have that would probably change our lives and or our practices, but we're just too fearful to experience them. When I've talked about my experience from growing up being able to see and interact with spirit, and then really diving deep into my Christian belief and dedicating myself to those beliefs, and then therefore moving away from them as I got older, one of the first things that I really had to do was become comfortable with what it was that I was experiencing and giving myself an opportunity to truly experience it without automatically thinking that everything I was experiencing was evil, bad, or something that was out to get me. And once I did that, the experiences that I had were much more profound and deep. I was able to have interactions with spirit that I was really never able to truly have prior to that because of fear. And it helped me to become more in touch with my abilities as well. When you're having interactions with spirit, whether it be an entity, a deity, a spirit, etc., the first thing that I encourage you to do is approach it from a place of curiosity. Curiosity creates us into a sponge for information. However, caution and curiosity can go hand in hand, and they should. Let's say that you are utilizing a spirit board. I'm going to use the spirit board example because I feel like it's a good one, given that a lot of people approach it with the mindset that they're doing something bad or that they're going to experience something evil, which if you do use a spirit board, try to go in with curiosity instead of that mindset of, I'm going to experience something evil and bad, because that is kind of setting the intention, if you will, of that experience. You get started with your spirit board session and you start having something come through. You ask for their name and you get 666. This might be something that automatically puts you on the defense. But instead, I want you to approach it with curiosity. Instead of immediately getting scared, ask it to clarify. Now the planchette moves to DEVIL, devil. Again, I want you to approach this with curiosity and not fear. You may be tempted from there to assume that you are talking with the devil, and from there you can ask a bunch of random religious questions if you want, or you can ask it why it's introduced itself that way. Maybe it will tell you that it is the devil, and what I want you to do is just ask questions. What kind of questions would you ask the devil if you had them in the room with you? Whether it's the true devil or not, I want you to go in with curiosity. If you had one chance to talk to something that you were most fearful of, what questions would you ask? Now, of course, you can shut down the spirit board session and start anew, or put it away for the night and assume that that was just a really bad experience. But going in with curiosity opens up so much more doors and opportunities to understanding things that we don't understand than when we go in with fear and closing ourselves off. Now, I want to ask a question that might seem weird to ask, but I'm going to ask you, when you feel genuine joy, what is your first response? If you said excited or happy, then that's great. That's awesome. But there are some people who would say hesitancy or fear. Or let's say that you meet someone new and they are being very, very sweet to you and very kind. What is your response? What is your first instinct? That they're trying to manipulate you, that they're doing it to control you. And this begs the question that if that person who is showing you kindness and being nice to you is genuinely a good person and doesn't have any bad intentions, which of course that can be a manipulation tactic by some people, but in this case, that person genuinely is a good person. If your first instinct is to assume that they're going to be doing something bad or that they're manipulating you, if we can't even identify whether someone has good intentions or not because of past experiences that we've had, how can we trust our nervous system to give us accurate information within spiritual spaces as well? And I don't want any of that to cause you to feel like, oh, well, I can't interact with spiritual experiences because I won't be able to trust myself. But instead, to have you look at real world experiences that you have where you're not able to truly trust until you have further experience with that person to see, is that person truly a good person? Are they truly doing it in a space where I can trust them? And there is no way to know right off the bat without giving them opportunity to prove to you that they are trustworthy. And this is the same way that we should approach any kind of spiritual experiences that we have. You never have to go into a spiritual experience completely trusting something if you don't feel that it's trustworthy, or completely feeling afraid of something if you don't know whether or not it's dangerous or not. But going in with curiosity is neutral. This is why I really heavily encourage people to approach experiences that they have within spiritual spaces, within meditation, within dreaming, within spell work, within ritual, with curiosity, because it's a neutral space. Of course, we're going to have bias. Of course, our nervous system is going to react in ways that we might not want it to. But when we approach it with curiosity and we bring ourselves back to a curious space, that is when we're able to truly have experiences in a way that allows us to be open to that experience, and then afterwards examine it through lenses that help us to identify whether it's safe or whether it's something that we should no longer continue. So going back to the spirit board example that I gave, that is experiences that I have had with spirit. I have had experiences during paranormal investigations, whether it's through a spirit box or a spirit board or other means of communication where a spirit isn't anything other than a human spirit that's wanting to interact, but they know that they can get a rise of energy out of you if you're fearful. So they will use tactics such as introducing themselves as Satan or the devil, because they know that a lot of people go into a fearful space from there and therefore release that fearful energy that they can then use however they choose. Does that mean that they are Satan or the devil or some sort of demon? No, but you can use it as a tactic to get what you want. And I truly believe that spirit is just like humans. There are humans that are good people and that we can trust, and there are people who are not good people and that are people we can't trust and will use manipulation tactics. So if we apply that to people, we should apply that also to spirit, because spirit isn't, in my opinion, completely good or completely bad. I do want to mention too that if you go into a spirit board session or a spirit box session or any kind of session, really, whether it's utilizing a tool outside of yourself or even if it's in meditation, going in with a mindset of I'm welcoming in spirits, entities, deities, etc., that have good intention for me and my own, or are wanting to be helpful to me in my practice, you can go in with that intention and see what comes through and see how your experiences differ between going in with that intention, stating that at the beginning before going into that session, compared to not doing that at all and just going in from a completely open space, and see what your experiences are. In a lot of ways, spirituality is being a mad scientist and doing experiments. Now, obviously, I don't want you to put yourself in a space of danger if you don't feel capable of managing if something goes wrong. But this is when we get into the banishing part of this episode, which is the whole reason why we're doing this episode in the first place. But I wanted to preface with all of that other stuff because I think it's detrimental to immediately go to banishing when we haven't asked ourselves the good questions of, am I scared? Am I fearful? Am I approaching this from a space of heavy bias, or am I approaching it from a space of curiosity? A couple different things that I would say would indicate a time when banishing is definitely needed or can be really beneficial is if you have had an experience with spirit, even if it was a seemingly good experience, but afterwards you find yourself feeling very, very depressive, in a really bad space mentally. Maybe you are suffering from a lot of intrusive thoughts or thoughts that are encouraging you to do harm to yourself or others. That is when I would encourage you to maybe do a cleansing or a banishing, and that is simply to kind of help you to come back to a baseline space. And I do want to encourage you to, unless you've had reason to specifically tie that result with a certain spirit or entity or experience that you've had, to try and not tie those results with that, because we can also sometimes put ourselves in a detrimental space based from fear because we are creating the outcome that we expect from a situation that didn't actually cause it in the first place. And that's not to say that that can't happen, but again, we're trying to approach this from a space of understanding of ourselves and an attempt to understand spirit or be open to spirit rather than closing ourselves off. Now, if you've had an experience with spirit that was seemingly good or was maybe something that you would perceive as a negative experience, and you're having a lot of physical activity in your house, maybe there are lights turning on and off by themselves, doors opening and closing by themselves, things moving around the house in general, that I also don't want you to see as automatically bad, because that could be a spirit, an entity, or an energy trying to interact with you in a way that is more physical so that you know that it's there and it's not just something that's in your head. But when your initial response is fear, that's okay, but you can also follow it up with curiosity. So maybe if a light is turning on and off by itself, start asking questions after that initial fear response of, why the heck is my light turning on and off by itself? You can then approach it of, hey, I don't know if anybody is trying to reach out and be in contact with me at this moment, but if you are, I assume you're using the light as a modality of communication. If you are trying to communicate utilizing the modality of a lamp, can you turn it on and off twice and then leave it on so that I know that it's a yes? And then see what happens. If it is trying to communicate and it does respond intelligently, then go from there of asking questions and see what kind of responses you can get. But if it doesn't seem intelligent and it's not really responding intelligently to your questions, then it may just be a fluke of electricity, or it might be an experience where it is something trying to communicate, but maybe they can't hear you or they don't know how to manipulate it in a way that is able to communicate or get in contact with you and answer your questions through that modality of communication. However, if you do want to be banishing something, cleansing yourself or your space of whatever is there, these are the things that I would recommend. I'm going to be using correspondences from this book, which is Complete Book of Correspondences by Sandra Kynes. Highly recommend this being in your witchy bookshelf, because I wish I had this book sooner. It is very helpful in a lot of regards. But there is a section in the issues, intentions, and powers called banishing. So anything under the section of banish is going to help you to clear energies from your space or yourself. Some of the colors that correspond with banishment is black, green, or purple. So something that you can do is take a black, green, or purple candle, whether it is a tea light, a chime candle, a taper candle, whatever kind of candle you have that is black, green, or purple, or you can buy a little birthday candle, whatever works for you, and you can carve your name, and ideally what I like to do is also add the birth date. So your full name, first name, middle name, last name to the candle, and then put your birth date on the candle as well. And then if you have room, or if you have the ability to also write on the candle, I banish all energies that are not mine from my space and self. And then if you have reversal oil or some sort of oil that is tied to banishing, so you can use dragon's blood oil if you have some, you can use garlic oil, peppermint oil, rose oil, clove oil, and dress the candle with it. So that just means putting it on the candle. Don't use a ton of it. You really just need to have a little bit on your fingers that you just rub over the candle, and then you light it. And when you light that candle, say with intention, whether in your head or out loud, I light this candle with the intention to clear any energies from my body and my space that are not my own energies and are causing me harm. And as that candle burns down, then it is clearing those energies from yourself and your space. If you're using a birthday candle, so one of the candles that is way too tiny for you to carve anything into the candle, what you can optionally do is write on a piece of paper or write on a dish. So if you're using like a fire safe dish, you can also use a dry erase marker or something like that and write your name and birth date and then the intention of the candle on that fire safe surface. Another option is if you have slate, so a slate candle holder, a slate charcuterie board, which I really like to use for ritual, or you can even use a slate coaster if you have one, and then write with chalk on that coaster your full name, your birth date, and the intention of that candle, and then burn the candle on top of that. If you don't have the option of actually writing onto the surface that you're burning the candle on, what you can also do is if you have a candle holder, like a little tiny votive holder or something like that that's glass, you can also write with dry erase marker on that around it and do that as well. You can also do it on a paper. So instead of burning the candle directly on the paper, you can put the paper underneath whatever surface you're burning that candle in with the full name, your birthday, and the intention of that candle. underneath that candle holder so that it's having that intention infused into the candle. Another option you can do is to create a banishing simmer pot. I would encourage you to use a pasta pot or a small sauce pot or even a Dutch oven that you can have on the burner and boil water in safely. And then what you're going to want to do is add a mixture of different types of herbs and ingredients that would correspond with banishing. If you're wanting to banish the energies in the space, you can just put the ingredients that I will list as options in that pot, and as it is boiling, you can stir it in a clockwise direction while saying in your head or out loud, I'm banishing the energies in my space that are not mine and or that have ill intention for me and those who live within this space. You are no longer welcome here, and I banish these energies from my space. Or if you're wanting to banish things from your own energy, you can also optionally add a tag lock for yourself. So you can either spit into the pot, or you can add a piece of your hair or even a nail clipping for you or other people in the house or other people involved in the situation if you want to banish things from their energy as well. And that way that banishment will be tied specifically to you and anybody else who has their tag locks within that mixture. So here's some ingredients that you can use or put into a simmer pot. Trees that are associated with banishing is alder, birch, blackthorn, cypress, elder, holly, horse chestnut, juniper, laurel, palm, pine, or witch hazel. A lot of people use witch hazel as a toner for their face. So if you have some witch hazel that you use to clean cuts and stuff, you can pour a little bit of that in the simmer pot. But you can walk around your neighborhood or walk around your yard, walk around your local park and see if there are any trees that would be good to use in a banishing ritual. Take some bark from it or take some leaves or other pieces from the tree. Ask the tree permission if you can do that, ideally, because that will be a better result than if you're just taking without asking permission. Before taking a piece of the tree, whether it's already fallen in the ground or not, ask it if it's okay to take it. And if you feel good about it, like there isn't any negative feeling that you have immediately, then I would say it's a yes. But if you immediately have a no in your head, or if you immediately feel hesitant to do it, then I would say that it's a no and just move on to a different ingredient. Some herbs from your garden or that you might find in your spice cabinet that are also associated with banishing is agrimony, angelica, basil, broom, clover, comfrey, fern, garlic, heliotrope, lilac, mugwort, peonies, peppermint, rose, rosemary, rue, St. John's wort, snapdragon, Solomon's seal, vervain, violet, or yarrow. And some other plants that you also might find in your spice cabinet or in your garden or yard is asafoetida, betony, clove, cumin, fairy wand, frankincense, galangal, horehound, mandrake, mistletoe, mullein, myrrh, nettle, patchouli, pepper, sandalwood, star anise, thistle, or wormwood. Another thing that I do want to remind you is that because when you are using a simmer pot, these ingredients will be released in a steam in your space, I do want you to be aware that some of these ingredients are considered poisonous, such as mistletoe and things like that. So please use caution when you are doing a simmer pot. I would encourage not utilizing poisonous herbs within a simmer pot since it would release it in a steam that you could potentially be inhaling and that might be detrimental. So just be aware. I would encourage you to instead use ingredients that ideally you can find in your spice cabinet because you know that those are going to be food safe. And obviously, if you have any oils that have have these ingredients in them or specifically have that, such as garlic oil, you can add that to the water as well. And then boil that mixture for as long as you feel like is necessary. It doesn't really have to be that long. You can just boil it down until it gets to the end of the pot if you choose. Just keep your eye on it, be fire safe. But if after an hour or so you feel that it has sufficiently cleared the energy, for some people, the energy around you or in your space will just feel lighter or less oppressive. And some people might not notice that, and that's totally fine. It doesn't mean that it's not working, but for some people, you will feel that energetic change in the space or within yourself. But if you do end up having some leftover liquid from the simmer pot, what you can do is strain it into a jar. And then I would add a little bit of alcohol, whether it is a drinking alcohol, such as a vodka or something along those lines, or you can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and then you can use that as a banishing cleansing spray or something that you can dress banishing candles with. And the alcohol is just going to be an emulsifier that helps keep it from really getting moldy or mildewy or going bad. And then you would just store that in a dark, cool space. Another option for people who don't really want to do a full-on simmer pot, but they do want to simmer something, is if you have an oil warmer or a wax warmer, you can also use that as a tiny little simmer pot. So just put a little bit of water in the top of it and put a couple ingredients that correspond with banishing, and then have the tea light warm that water. Just make sure that you are not letting the water completely go down. You're adding water as needed until the tea light itself goes out. Obviously, there are so many different options for banishing. I'm not going to go over all of them today because we would be here for a while. But if you do want some more ideas for banishing, you can go to the episode Cleansing, Banishing, and Protection. And there's options for banishing in there that might be helpful. But regardless, I hope this episode was helpful in giving you some ideas of better ways to approach situations where you might be experiencing fear or feeling like you are dealing with something in your space that you're not really wanting there. And hopefully it gave you the opportunity to approach spirit from a space of curiosity rather than fear and defense. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to leave them in the comments and I would be happy to help try and give some advice or guidance. Or you can always book with me on my website, arielwillow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify for exclusive subscriber episodes. I hope you all have had an amazing month and I look forward to talking to you again next month.